thank you very much everyone today for your time, for coming to this webinar. So this webinar, as Fergus mentioned, is getting started on Learn with Nala. So the idea is for anybody who's new to our platform, hopefully you'll feel that you're able to create learner accounts and navigate the system after the webinar today. As we mentioned in the introduction, if you have any questions, you can type them in the questions box. I'll go through the questions at the end, so we'll leave some time around 20 to 2 to go through questions. There's also a symbol, a hand symbol, and you can put up your questions. You can click on the hand symbol and I can unmute you and you can ask your question as well. So that's available to you too. Okay, so today what I'm going to run through is the learner perspective. So how you create a learner account and register the learner for courses, and then the tutor view, so what you're able to do as a tutor. So to get started, the first thing is that you are in a centre, and if you're a registered centre, then it means that you should have got an email by now, which provides you with a link which is specific to your centre. Okay, so if you haven't got that email, you can email me at the end of today. I'll put up my email address. And if you're not in a centre that's registered with us, I'll also explain later on in the webinar how you can become a registered centre. Okay, so there's a specific link that we give you when you become a registered centre, and that link is tied to your centre. So those of you that might have worked on Write On, which was our old e-learning platform, when learners would go in to create an account, there was a drop-down list of about 190 centres, which was quite confusing for the learner. So we've made it easier now so that just your centre name will appear on their account page. Then they would create their account, and then they have to do a register for courses. So it's a two-step process: create an account and register for courses. It's worth saying that all learners, including Write On learners, need to go through this two-step process. Okay, so Write On learners weren't automatically transferred across. And if there are 2 or more accounts created, we can't merge the work, unfortunately. So if you have a learner who maybe has already set up an account for themselves as an independent learner, let us know. We can move the learner across, but they may end up losing work. It depends on how much work that they have done. So just to bear that in mind. The advantage of a learner being listed under your centre is that you'll be able to go in as a tutor and see their progress, which is something we didn't have on the old platform. So it is worth listing your learners in under your centre. So I'll demonstrate this. So for example, here is a particular link. There's a code at the end of it, INVUP. Okay, so this link will go out to you as a tutor in an email. And what that means is that that link, that particular code, is tied to a particular centre. So in this case, the centre is Involve Youth Project Navan. Okay, if you're in another centre, you'll have a slightly different code here and it'll be tied to another centre. So we provide you with this link in an email. As a learner, then I need to go out and fill out all this information. So I put in a username, a password, so I can choose my own password. I will need an email, so make sure that the learners do have their own email account, if possible. Sometimes we've seen that tutors will put in their emails. If you are in a centre that's not attached to an ETB, I should say that bear in mind, we have a requirement from SOLAS to upload learners' details into a SOLAS database, which would be the same for all further education and training learners. So it could mean that your email address as a tutor might end up going into that database. So it is important that the learner has their own email address if possible. Then they put in their first name, their last name, their address. So that can be the center address or it can be their home address, phone number, and they do need to put in their PPSN. So we do ask for that up front. Their gender and then date of birth. And then once that information is in, the learner can click on Terms of Service. And there is a video on that page that explains all the information that's below. And the same for privacy policy. So if you click on that link, there's a video there that explains all the privacy terms. So once those two boxes are ticked, then click on Create Account. Okay, so that's the first step. I've created an account now for this particular learner. The second step, and this is my learner's name here, it's just coming up, Involved Test Learner 9. Then the second step is that I have to register for a course. So those of you that might have used Write On, what used to happen is the learner was automatically enrolled or had all the courses available to them. Now we've created a choice, so the learner and you together can decide what courses are most suitable. You can pick courses in a bundle, for example, Level 2 Certificate in General Learning. If I click here, there's a video here that I can play, and I can make the video larger, that explains what this means. It also tells me what courses are available. So there's reading, writing, listening and speaking, pattern and relationship, using technology, and personal decision making. So if the learner was to do all of those 6 courses, they would get a major award from QQI in general learning. If I click register now, that will automatically register me for all 6 courses. Okay. At this point, if I wanted to sign up for additional courses, I can click on the back button and I could sign up for level 3 courses if I wish, or individual courses. So for example, I might sign up for level 1 pattern and relationship and click register now. Okay, so at any time you can go back to this page, which is courses.nala.ie. For those of you that have signed up today, I will provide the slides as well that explains all of this. So you can go to courses.nala.ie and you can put in the learner's username and password and then register them for courses. So what happens is once you're registered for courses, if I click on clicking here, okay, so it's just going to ask me for that learner name, which is Involve Test Learner 9. Okay, and now I'm brought into Brightspace. So Brightspace is the name of our platform, and this is where all the courses are. So the first thing I would see is if I'm part of a centre, that I should see my centre logo here. So if you're in an ETB, for example, your ETB logo should appear here. And then all the courses that I've signed up for are here under all, under my courses. If I click on Level 2 General Learning, then I see just those 6 Level 2 courses that I've signed up for. If I click on Level 1, then I see that one Level 1 course. The Brightspace courses are courses that would be available from Brightspace, which is the name of the e-learning provider. At the moment, we don't have any of those courses available. Okay, but these are all the courses that we would have had on our old Write On platform, and our courses at level 2 and level 3 will allow a learner to get a full QQI award, both a major if they do the right number of credits and a minor award in each of these subjects. So just going back to the slides then, that was the first steps that you need to do with a learner. So you go to a particular link that we give you in an email. The learner needs to fill out their information and then register for courses. So for a learner to go through a course then, once they click on that register now, and it brings them into the Brightspace part, then they click on a course, they click on this book symbol content, and they would see the lessons page. So this lessons page is similar to what you might have seen on Write On, which was a path of courses that you, or a path of blocks that you had to follow. In this case, the idea is that you can access all the content or these blocks here, and you work your way from the top to the bottom. The first block that's here is called What Do I Already Know? And this is an initial assessment. It's what we call our recognition of prior learning. So the idea is that at level 2 and level 3, all the content is mapped to QQI learning outcomes. So for example, using technology has 3 outcomes. And in that first block, there's 3 tasks. Each task maps to each learning outcome. The idea being that if a learner was to do all of these tasks and get all these tasks right, they could skip through these lessons and they could actually do another summative assessment, or what we call an end test, and they could very quickly get their QQI award. So the idea is that if a learner has maybe some prior knowledge, maybe never got a national certificate, they could very quickly, using that prior knowledge, make their way through a course. Some tutors and some centres use this, so they'll work with the learner to help them get through the course by using this recognition of prior learning, and can very quickly get an end test and do that and get a cert. Other tutors and centres like learners to start at lesson 1 and work their way through the course. So, it really depends on what way you want to use the content. So learners can do tasks in this initial assessment. So as I said, we have this for our level 2 and level 3 courses. If the learner fails or decides not to do that first block at all, then in order to get through the course, they would have to do lessons. If they do fail a task, the grade will stay as fail, or what we call go to lesson. I'll explain that in a minute. And if the learner completes the tasks or the lessons, then they need to do a summative assessment and also portfolio work, which is in some courses. So the way through a course is either to do all the tasks in that first block, and straight away you'll get an end test, to do the first block, and if everything is answered incorrectly, then the learner has to work their way through all the lessons to get this end test to appear. Or if they do the tasks and they get some things right and some things wrong, then they can use a combination. So for example, here it says that they only have to do the lessons that correspond to incorrectly answered tasks. So what that means is if task 2 result is go to lesson, which means that the learner has failed that task, then they need to do lesson 2. So the idea being is that there's a lesson block there that the learner can use to brush up their skills and practice before they go on to a final end test. And if they do the end test and get everything right, and portfolio work where it exists, then that leads to course completion. The learner can look at their own progress, both within a course and overall. So under their account name, they can click on progress and they can see how they're getting on. So let me demonstrate this. So if I go back here to my learner account, and for example, if I decided to start on the course using technology, I would click on the course and then click on content. And I should say that there are videos down here as well that explain how to do all these steps. So they're there for the learner, and I encourage people to view them. So I can click on content, and then it will bring me to this lessons page that I was talking about. So there's that first block, then there's the lessons. And if the learner in this case is in a centre that's not affiliated to an ETB, we do ask for additional information to be filled out. So that's what appears for this particular learner. So I could start in that first block and click on Start Here. Okay, so this is our welcome screen, and it explains that this first block is made up of 3 tasks. So if I click on Next up here in the top corner, then you can see the type of tasks that are being asked. So at level 2, there's usually not so many learning outcomes. So normally this first block has very few tasks. So in this case, there's 3 because there's 3 learning outcomes. So it says there's question 1 of 2. And in this type of activity, I need to click beside what I think is the right answer. And then move on to question 2. And then it says, which of these would you use to invite someone to your birthday party? And I'm going to click on email and then continue. Now, the video that you saw on the previous page, the home page, explains all of this to the learner as well, and how to navigate then to the next task. Okay, so this type of activity is what we call a drag and drop. So in this case, the learner needs to drag the items that they think belong under the correct heading. And it tells you here that there's 3 things beside good things and not so good things that are good or bad about the internet. So if I drag less face-to-face communication to not so good, and then continue on for all the things, and then click on check answers. Okay, it's important that the learner does that because then they'll see their score. Okay, you'll see in the lessons very shortly that in the lessons there's an opportunity to try the activity again that we don't offer in this block because it's an assessment. And then in this type of task, it's what we call a drop-down question. So the learner needs to read the instructions, click on the arrow, and choose what they think is the right answer. So you can leave a voice message for someone on voicemail. You can send emails from one person to another using the @ symbol, and texts are short messages sent between mobile phones. Click on continue, and I get my score. And then if I go next, then it tells me that I've finished that quiz. There are 2 videos. If I think I answered everything correctly, I can play that video and make it larger. Or if I think I got some things wrong, what I can do then, okay? And these videos explain how the learner can view their progress. So they explain that I can click on back to content and my progress, and go to grades. Okay, and you're going to be able to do all of this as a tutor as well, so you'd be able to help your learner. And I'll show you how to do that very shortly. And what you see here is the 3 tasks that I've just done and a grade beside them. In this case, everything is passed. What you'll notice when I go back to content here as well, in that first block now, those tasks have disappeared. Okay, so task 1, 2, and 3 that were listed there previously are gone. And this is important to know because they will disappear when the learner has fully done the questions. If there's still tasks appearing here, it means that the learner hasn't done the questions. Okay, so just make sure when you're looking at the work with the learner that they have answered all the tasks if you choose to use that first block. Otherwise, you can work your way through the lessons. Okay, so at this point, if I wanted, I could go into lesson 1, and there's a video that explains what the lesson is about. And I can see that there's activities like this one, where I need to drag and drop things to the correct place. And this time, there is a try again button that appears. So it allows me to try that activity again and brush up on my skills. You'll also notice here that beside back to content, there's a little symbol of 3 lines. If I click on that, it just tells me where I am in the lesson and how much of the lesson I've done. These messages will pop up as well when a learner has got tasks right in that first block called What Do I Already Know? So there are awards or badges that we give for completing work successfully. If the learner didn't do that block, they would get those same badges if they worked their way through a complete lesson. Okay. So in this particular case, the end test has appeared, okay, which means that the learner can now go in and do this, do those 3 questions, and if they get everything right, then they would have done everything that they need to do for using technology at level 2. What would happen then is that we in NALA would check the learner's work. We would run rounds of certification, and actually there is a webinar tomorrow. I'll show you a link to that at the end of today, which will go through what we do as part of QQI preparation. And then if we saw that everything was correct, we would automatically forward this learner for a QQI award at level 2 in using technology. So the learner or yourselves in the centre don't need to do anything. We do all the internal verification and bring in an external authenticator to check that learner's work. Okay, so that is simply what the learner has to do. As I say, at level 2, this course happens to be the shortest course. So that gives you an idea of how quickly a learner could get through. At level 3, there is a lot more involved because obviously it's a level up and the stakes are higher. So just to go back to the slides, that's how the learner can view their progress. There's 2 ways. The learner can go to My Progress, or they can go to this bell symbol. And they can also click beside their name and Progress. And here they can also see the same view with grades. Okay, so there's 2 ways that the learner can check their grades. So now I'll go through what you can do as a tutor and how you can see this information as well with your tutor account. Okay, so to get through a course, if the learner wants a QQI certificate, they need to successfully complete the end tests and portfolio work. And that end test will only appear based on conditions of either getting all the tasks right or doing all the lessons or a combination of both. Once a task is failed, the status will always say go to lesson. So it means that if task 2 is failed, then the learner needs to go to lesson 2 and work their way through the whole lesson. And then questions in the end test can be repeated as many times as needed. The learner simply needs to click on the question and retake content. Okay, and I can show you how the learner would do that as well. As a tutor, we create the account for you and we automatically enroll you into courses. So you don't need to go and create an account for yourselves. When we set you up as a tutor, we'll give you the link for the learner and we'll give you your account details as well. And you can go and change the password that we give you. And then you can click on a course and go to course admin and to class progress or grades to see the learner's progress. So for example, you can see the same view that the learner just saw. So you can go to class progress, pick out a learner, go to grades, and then see how they got on. So for example, there's an example of go to lesson for task 2. So if I was helping the learner through this course, I'd tell them that they have to go and do lesson 2. And even when they do lesson 2, this will always stay as go-to lesson, okay? Or I can also go to the course and look up learners' grades. So I can view the same information, but it's in a slightly different presentation. So I can see overall how they got on, and I can also see their grades for each of those items. So if it's tasks or questions. So let me demonstrate this. So I'm back here in my learner account. I can see that I need to do an end test in this course. So just to give you an idea what the end tests look like, very similar to what you saw in that first block. Okay, so the questions are very similar, slightly different answers here and slightly different phrase, but again, testing the same learning outcome from QQI. So in this case, I'm just going to put in some wrong answers just to show you what happens. So the score comes up. There's no option to try again because this is an assessment. Okay, so I can answer this question. When might you want to use a website? Okay. And then the third and last question, I use blank when I'm on the train to call home. I will say mobile phone. And I use blank to type up my homework. I will say laptop. Okay, so I'm going through these obviously very quickly. Okay, and you can see that I got everything right. And similarly to that first block, there's 2 videos here. One, if you think you got everything right, and the second one to tell you what to do if you think you got some things wrong, with our phone number there, our free phone number, 1-800 20 20 65, that you or your learners can ring anytime between 9:30 and 5 o'clock. If you ring us outside those times, just leave a message and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So we can help you with your grades as well, or with the learner's grades, and tell the learner what to do. So in this case, I can go back to content, go to my progress, go to grades. Okay, I can see those tasks as before, they remain the same. I can see now my question results, and I see here that question 1 is redo. So to redo that question, I can simply go back to content, go into the end test, go straight to question 1, so I don't need to do all the questions again. And what's really important here, so that the grade changes, is that the learner clicks on retake content. Okay, the review content simply means that the learner can do the question again, but their grade won't change. That might be useful if you wanted to give somebody practice in doing end tests. They can always practice the question over and over again, but it won't change their grade. But if you want to improve their grade so that they have a chance of finishing the course, then they need to do retake content. So that might be a strategy. If you wanted to adopt that, you could get them to review it a few times to practice or retake it. I should say that for every question that appears here, it's taken from a pool of 3 questions. Okay, so there's 3 possible questions that can appear at any time. So when the learner is reviewing it, or rather retaking it, they may get a different question to what they got before. So this time I'll try and get it right. And I'll go to apps, drag this to messaging, and this one for online learning. And check answers, and I get my score right. And this time, when I go to progress, I should see that my grade is now pass. Okay, and you can see the timestamp on this as well. so that this question was tried a little bit later in the day. Okay, so that's everything from the learner's perspective. So as a tutor, we would give you a link to this page, which is learn.nala.ie. We would give you a username and a password, which you can change by going to forgot your password, this link here, and it will send a password request to your email so that you can change your password. And what you see is the same view as the learner. So you see your center logo, you see all the courses that are available on Learn with Nala. At the moment, we have 8 level 1s, 8 level 2s, and 8 level 3s. If for whatever reason a course doesn't appear here, just email me and I'll register you on that course. So I can move between different levels by clicking on these different options at the top. So for example, level 1, I should see the level 1 courses. If I scroll across and go to level 3, general learning, I can see the level 3 courses. We have some other areas here that aren't populated at the moment, like level 4, because we haven't put level 4 courses up there yet, but that's something that is in the pipeline to do. And for those level 2 general learning courses, they're all here. Now, if I'm interested in how my learners are getting on, I can click on a course and go to course admin and class progress. So this is the piece that the learner doesn't have. And I can see a list of all the learners who've enrolled in that course, and I can see their progress or how they're getting on. So for example, that learner that we were just looking at, I can scroll across here and I can see blue bars, which means that the learner has got things right. So this is useful if it's a very short course because you can see all the questions. But for a long course like maths at level 3, I would recommend to click on the learner and to go to grades and to see the grades here. So this is the same view that we just saw for the learner under my progress. So I can see the tasks from that first block and the questions from the second block. The other area to look at would be the likes of content. Now, this learner only started a bit of one lesson. If you remember, we dipped into it. So I can see that they've done 13% of that lesson. And I can click on the arrow here to get more details. And where you see these ticks here, let me enlarge my screen a bit. Where you see the ticks here, it means that the learner has visited the page and you can see how long they've spent on it. So if you have a learner who's flying through a lesson and they say they have everything done, you'll be able to go in and see exactly how long they've spent on it. Or you might have a learner who's really getting stuck in a question and spending a very long time in it, in minutes or even hopefully not hours. And that would be an indicator for you that the learner might have a problem with that area. When you click on the title here, it will bring you to that page that the learner had visited. Okay, so you'll be able to see exactly what that learner was looking at. And to get out of that, then I just need to go back to content again. Okay, so that's the progress view that you can see as a tutor. The other view is if I go to course admin and go to grades, then I can see all the learners again listed, and I'm just seeing all the grades that are available in this course just presented in a different way. So I can see that this particular learner, number 2, has passed all the tasks. They have no grades for questions. This learner would need to do lesson 2, but we only have grades on the first block, what do I already know, and the end test. Okay, so there's no grades for all the activities that you see in the lessons. So this is what you're seeing in here. And you can see, you can go straight or scroll all the way across, and there's a grade that we've put in called end test passed. because this is important for you to check, particularly with the level 3 learners who will have a lot of questions to do in the end test and have portfolio work to do, that the learner has successfully got through that end test. Okay, so that's for this particular course. If I wanted to look at another course, I can click on my home button, maybe look at a course like Maths Level 3. So I'll go to Level 3 General Learning and click on Maths. And again, if I do the same steps again, so if I go to Course Admin and Grades, then I see a list of all my learners, how they got on overall, and I can scroll across and see grades for the tasks from the first block, and then questions. Now in Maths at Level 3, there's 21 learning outcomes, and we actually have 2 questions at Level 3 that matches each learning outcome. So there's 42 questions that the learner needs to do in Maths at Level 3. So they're all listed there, and you can see the grades for each of them. If I scroll all the way across, I can quickly go to this grade called End Test Passed, which is a list of all the end tests. So I can see, for example, that here's a learner who was successful in everything, but here's learners who weren't successful in the end test. So then I'd need to go back here and see, well, what questions did they get wrong? So for example, if I'm interested in this first learner here, as I'm scrolling back, I can see that, for example, question 5.2 measurement is something that that learner got wrong. So what I would advise this learner to do is to go into the course Maths, go to Content, go to the end test and go straight into question 5.2 and click on retake content so that they can redo it again. And then the other option that I can also do is look at course admin and class progress. And I can see these are the blue bars that I was talking about, so I can scroll across and see how the learners got on. Or I can click into this particular learner and I can see under grades what questions they've done and what grade they might have. So there's my measurement 5.2 that I can see as a redo. I might be also interested to know if this learner did lessons or not. So then I can click on content and I can see that they have done the first block, that they have done, and in Maths we've divided up because there's a lot of lessons, there's 21, we've divided them up into 5 sections. So I can see that they've done a bit of this lesson, all of this lesson, lesson 8. And I'm assuming that this learner has done lesson 8 and 18 because they have failed the tasks in the first block, what do I already know? And if I want to double check that, I can go back to grades again and go down to where it says other items. And there I can see that task 18 does say go to lesson. And even though we just saw that the learner had done all of lesson 18, that grade will stay as go to lesson. It doesn't change. Okay. We are working on a way to provide some data on the dashboard for centres so that you'll be able to see more information about the centre when you log in. So that's coming in, well, later this year. If you have any questions about viewing progress, you can also email me directly on that. So that is the tutor view in a nutshell. As I say, there is a webinar that I recommend tomorrow to attend. So if you go to nala.ie, It's this one called Preparing Learners for QQI Certification. And in that, we'll go through all the portfolio work that's needed. So that's most of the courses at level 3 and 2 of the courses at level 2 that require additional work to the end test as well. Okay, and you should find in today's webinar that there's a handout there that we've put in, which is the latest version of the tutor guide. That tutor guide is also available to you when you are on the home page of the platform. So when you click on the home button and help, you should see that tutor guide. There's also a list of tutor resources there, and there's a course that we're working on called Learn with Nala, like a getting started guide for learners as well. So that's something that we're updating, but you can download that tutor guide there. And I would recommend to go through it. There is tips, for example, about how to update learner details. So for example, if the learner changes their email, once their account is created, you can follow those steps to update the learner's details. And I would also recommend having a look at our tutor courses that are available. So when you go to courses.nala.ie and click on tutor courses, you can register for any of those courses that are available to you for free. If you are not a registered centre, you can go to that same page, courses.nala.ie, and click on Become a Centre and fill out this form here, and that will prompt us then to send a form back to you, which is a memorandum of understanding, which you can fill out. There is an NALA membership that we ask people to pay as well if you're a small organisation or a large organisation, and you get a number of membership benefits, including being able to apply for a student fund, which is worth up to €650 to help develop your learners. So there's definitely a lot of membership benefits involved. And then we would also put on training for you. In addition to these webinars, we can do one-to-one sessions as well. So that would kick off that process if you want to fill that out. And then finally, I'll just put up my email here. So it's cwhelan@nala.ie. If you're interested in becoming a registered centre, you can also email mou@nala.ie. And at any time, if you have any questions about the platform, you can email us to freephone@nala.ie. Or if you are interested in becoming an NALA member, to M. Murray, and then for CPD workshops to G. Harris. And I will send out these slides to everybody after the webinar today. So at this point, I'm just going to go and have a look, see if there's any questions that have come up. So if you have any questions, feel free to click on the hand symbol now, and I can unmute you, or you can feel free to type in a question as well. So I'm just looking down through the list here. So I see Paula, you have a question. So I have just unmuted you now. Paula, if you want to go ahead.
Thanks. Okay, no, I just tried to log into one of the, or to register for one of the tutor courses, but it said an error had occurred and I was logged in under my tutor login for Learn with Nala. So just flagging that up. It was the the second integrating literacy one, practical integration. Yeah.
I'll have a look at your account, Paula. If you want to email me after this, I can look into that for you in more detail. So if you just want to email me,
okay,
cwhelan@nala.ie, and I'll have a look at your account and see what's gone wrong there for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there's anybody else that has a question, feel free to put up your hand now or to type in a question as well. I see there's a hand up beside Mary. So Mary, I'm going to unmute you now. And if you want to go ahead, Mary.
Hi, yeah, I'm just wondering, like we're a youth training CTC, and if we get the certs for the learners, are they coming from NALA or can they be coming from our centre?
So what happens is the certs would come from QQI to us in NALA, and then we would send them out to you in the centre. and then we leave it to you to distribute them. So some centres like to do like a, you know, an award ceremony and have it as part of that. If the learners are independent learners, as in not in a centre, then we would send the cert directly home to the learner. But it is a QQI certificate that they receive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. No, the learners would be, they would be all part of our centre. But would NALA be considered the provider, or would our centre?
Well, we consider you to be the provider, which is why we've put that logo for your centre up on the platform. So we recognise that they're your learners. I
Okay.
suppose in terms of all the QQI work, in that respect, then NALA is considered the provider because we're doing the internal verification and the external authentication. So we do all the work, you could say, on your behalf or on the centre's behalf to QQI. So we in NALA went through a big re-engagement process over a year ago with QQI so that we could continue to provide this online learning. But yes, I suppose it's they're your learners. I'm on all of that, and I suppose in terms of the certificates and so on, that's all goes to you as a centre. But then from a QQI management, you know, we're recognised as the provider that's putting the details into the QQI database.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. If there's any other questions, feel free to put up your hand now. And maybe while I'm just waiting for questions to come up, I do have a poll here, which I would be interested to know your thoughts on. So the first poll is about what areas are you and your learners interested in? So is it QQI level 1? Is it QQI level 2? Is it QQI level 3, or is it non-QQI areas? And if it's non-QQI areas, maybe you'd type in the question box what you think you'd like to have or see on the platform. So I'll give you a minute or two just to fill that in. Okay, so what seems to be coming in predominantly is that it's QQI level 3. And then it's split evenly between QQI level 1, 2, and non-QQI for the rest of the people here today. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. The next poll is about what are the greatest barriers at the moment for setting up learners or getting users or learners started on the platform. So is it lack of time to set up learners? Is it lack of resources to support learners when they're working remotely? Is it poor broadband? Is it devices, both on the learner side, maybe on the centre side? Or is it other priorities for learners and staff as a result of COVID? So that maybe learning is further down on the list for people at the moment. So I'll give you a few seconds to fill that out. What I can see at the moment that I suppose the most common theme seems to be resources, also other priorities. If there's any comment that you have on that as well, feel free to type it into the question box. Okay, so mostly what seems to be coming through is other priorities for learners and staff due to COVID. Okay, thank you for that. And the last poll that I'm launching is, what is the best way we in NALA can help you in using the platform and indeed other resources that we have in NALA? So would it be more webinars? Would it be dedicated Q&A time that we could set up with you and your colleagues? Is it free phone support? Would it be more resources like videos or guides, or would it be something else? And feel free to type your thoughts into the questions box as well. Okay, so what seems to be mostly coming in is more resources. Thank you, Lisa. You had put in a suggestion as well about the webinars being useful and more resources. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that. So I'm just going to go through the final questions that are there. If you have a question and you haven't had a chance to ask, go ahead now. I see, Lisa, you had a question, so I'm just going to unmute you if you want to. Go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was just, I suppose in our centre, it's quite difficult doing remotely. It'd be much easier when we're in the centre. How do you find this platform when English isn't the first language for students?
Yeah, I mean it is a good point, and I suppose we had started last year when we were launching the platform, focusing on level 2 and 3 so that people could get certification. But now with COVID, we're really trying to reach the furthest behind learners. So that's why we've put a big effort into launching level 1 courses this year. And those level 1 courses don't have any assessments in it, so there's no initial block of what do I already know or anything like that. Now, all the content is mapped back to QQI, but we're just not validated with QQI, so we can't offer a QQI certification at the moment. So I suppose what I would say is maybe for those learners, maybe start them at level 1, get them used to the platform, because the questions are very similar to what you saw at level 2 and 3, but they don't have the added complication of having to track their grades and so on. They can simply start in lesson 1 and work their way through it. And indeed, there is more areas that we're interested in looking at and launching that are non-QQI. So if you had any ideas on that, Lisa, you're welcome to email me, because it's something that we definitely want to explore more of. But yes, I would recommend starting with the level 1 courses,
Okay.
registering for 1 or 2 of those just to get people familiar with the platform, because a lot of the time people might have quite good literacy and good digital skills, but then obviously they're not working in their own language, so sometimes the navigation isn't so hard for them. But I can see that obviously going and tracking your grades and so on is a more complex process. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Lisa. If there's anybody else who has a question, feel free to ask. I'm just looking at some of the comments that have come in. There was one about preparing for level 3. That is an area that we had on the old platform. It's the next area that we're looking to launch, so it'll be probably later this year before we have anything on that. But the whole idea is to help learners going from level 2 to level 3. And it's all, again, non-accredited, but the idea being that there's content in there that is practice for the learner, so they can simply work their way through lessons and gain confidence in maths, particularly things like algebra and so on, and going from writing simple sentences at level 2 to more complex paragraphs at level 3. There was a question here from Emer that I'm going to read out. Can Learn with NALA be used as a support tool only? Do you have to complete a full course, or can you just use parts of a short course and not get certified? That's absolutely fine as well. What I would say is, as a tutor, when you log in, you'll be able to see all the content within a course, and I would recommend that you click on those blocks like lesson 1, lesson 2 and so on, and see how you can dip in and out of it. So particularly if you were doing something in maths, you could go straight to the algebra lessons and you could use that for blended learning. So that's fine. There was a question from Paula about, do you have any examples of best practice for a blended learning situation? That's a really good question. I don't have any, I suppose, examples just at this moment. I suppose the platform at the moment is very new. I would recommend maybe looking on some of our past webinars where there are some good tips that have come in. And also, I suppose to say that you know, it's about building confidence digitally as well. So you don't have to necessarily follow a full course. Perhaps start at level 1, dip in and out of the content, try the activities. You saw the type of activity where I had to click on an arrow to choose an answer, and that's very typical to what a learner might have to do in an online form where they have to choose from different options. So I suppose learners are building skills in terms of their literacy, but also their digital literacy, so that they can interact and hopefully get more confident in being online. We're just coming up to 2 now, so I'm apologies if I didn't get to all the questions. Feel free to email me after this, so it's cwhelan@nala.ie, particularly if you've had a problem with your account, and I'm happy to go through it. And hopefully we might see you at tomorrow's webinar, which will be all about portfolio work and preparing for the next round of QQI certification. And thank you very much for your time today. We hope you found it useful.